Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Bihari Shri Srimad Divan Grace Shilay Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantara Shima Bhagavad Gita Ki Go Premanandi Mukham Garoti Vachalam Bungam Lingayate Girim Yakri Patamaham Bande Shigurun Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Okay, today, it's not on the board, forgive me. We should have one of those electronic things, you know, that you can just do it on your phone or do it on a laptop and pop the verse up there. The building's a little bit difficult because, you know, the walls are short on this end and you can't put it in the front there. Deities, I don't know, maybe you can hang it a little bit. But anyway, we don't have the verse written. So I was wanting to do a verse from the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. I'll read the Sanskrit here. Of course, it's in Roman letters. I don't read it in the Devanagari.
What number is it?
It's text 42 and 43. If you have a phone, you can follow. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 42 and 43. Yamimam pushpitam vacham tam pushpitam vacham pravadanti paripaschita pravadanti abhipaschita vedavadarata pata Nanyat astiti vadinaha Yamimam pustitam vacham Pravadanti abhipaschita Elavararata pata Nanyat astiti vadinaha. Then there's a second line Kamatmana swagapada janma kama palapadam Kriyabhisesha bahulam Yogais bodhya gatimpati. Okay, translation. Please repeat. Men of small knowledge are very much attracted or attached, very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth, being desirous of sense gratification, and opulent life. They say there's nothing more than this. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to the heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth, being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life. They say there's nothing more than this. In Srila Prabhupada's Divine Purport, people in general are not very intelligent, and due to their ignorance, they are most attached to the fruitive activities recommended in the karma kanda portions of the Vedas. They do not want anything more than sense gratificatory proposals for enjoying life in heaven, where wine and women are available, and material opulence is very common. In the Vedas, many sacrifices are recommended for elevation to the heavenly planets, especially the Jyotishtoma sacrifices. In fact, it is stated that anyone desiring elevation to heavenly planets must perform these sacrifices. And men with a poor fund of knowledge think that this is the whole purpose of Vedic wisdom. It is very difficult for such inexperienced persons to be situated in the determined action of Krishna consciousness. If fools are attached to flowers of poisonous trees, without knowing the result of such attractions, unintelligent men are similarly attached to such heavenly opulence and the sense enjoyment thereof. In the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, it is said, Apama somam amritam abuma and akshayam, akshayam havai chaturamasya jaga suskritam bhavati. In other words, those who perform the 4-month penances become eligible to drink the somarasa beverages to become immortal and happy forever. Even on this earth, some are very eager to have somaras, to become strong and fit to enjoy sense gratifications. Such persons have no faith in liberation from material bondage, and they are very attached to the pompous ceremonies of Vedic sacrifices. They are genuinely sensual, and they do not want anything other than the heavenly pleasures of life. It is understood that there are gardens called Nandana Kanana, in which there is good opportunity for association with angelic, beautiful ladies, and having a profuse supply of somarasa wine. Such bodily happiness is certainly essential, Therefore there are those who are purely attached to such material, temporary happiness as lords of the material world. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to the 42nd and 43rd verse of the second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we have that clock, if I'm looking at it right, it looks like about 25 minutes, so it's not so long. We'll have to serve the feast at 1:30. Somebody remember that Tejas Prabhu's not feeling well, which is the norm. But today he won't be able to make it up here, but he still has enough appetite that he would like somebody to bring him some prasada. So if we see John, we can ask John to bring him a plate around 2 o'clock, So we can use him as an example. This is a person born in a fairly well-to-do Jewish New York family. And from his previous life, he had a good karma to be very intelligent, and from even a very, very young age, and to earn money, no problem making money. His family had money. But he learned some lessons in life that actually these temporary things were not very important. He was raised in such a way to be very respectful and tolerant, and he suffered a lot of persecution being Jewish, unfortunately, but that was the situation. And although he had lots of money, he gave it away and became a Peace Corps worker to try to help people. By Providence arrangement, he chose to go to India. And in 6 weeks' time, they taught him to speak Telugu. And he went to, that state right above, what is that, Madhya Pradesh? That state where they speak Telugu. What state is that? Andhra Pradesh? Yeah. Andhra Pradesh, not Madhya Pradesh. Andhra is the lower Pradesh. So there he worked with the tribal people, and as Bhakti Purushottam was discussing yesterday, the tribal people need a lot of help. And if Krishna conscious people or even Vedic people don't help them, then there's plenty of other people that are helping them to some extent, and they're all, taking up those cultures. So anyhow, he was there as a Peace Corps worker, not to teach them some sort of culture, or even for education or medicine. He was there to teach them how to farm, how they could actually, because they had land, how to actually cultivate that land is with as much production as one can actually get out of it. And while there, though, he met some Sri Vaishnavas. And they taught him Bhagavad Gita. And because he could read Devanagari or Telugu, one or the other, he could read in the bus the Hare Krishna mantra when traveling on the bus. And because the bus was so uncomfortable and so crowded and hot, he had to do something, so he would just read the Hare Krishna mantra. And that's how he started chanting. And then the Sri Vaishnavas taught him Bhagavad Gita. And from there he eventually left, went to Japan a little bit, and amongst the Buddhists, he was chanting Hare Krishna, so they asked him to leave. And eventually came back to America, where he met Rupanuga Prabhu, who was doing a college program at the University of New York in Buffalo. And there he went on to become temple president, and when Srila Prabhupada asked for some more help in India, Rupanuga suggested that Tejas go back, since he already understood the language and could operate there. And they went back to become temple president of India. Performed a lot of austerity in the sense that he was preaching, maintaining the temple. The government didn't always trust the devotees there at that time. They were Americans. India was aligned with Russia. There was war with Pakistan, there was war with China. So who wanted some CIA agents running around? So often our devotees were thought to maybe be connected in some way. And Tejas had made many connections in government. So they actually had a Sikh gentleman who spent 24/7 observing everything he did, even when he was sleeping. So eventually they reported that he seemed to be genuine. He was really interested in teaching Krishna consciousness and serving his Guru Maharaj Srila Prabhupada and reestablishing Vedic culture and Vedic principles and helping the populace to be better citizens by practicing Krishna consciousness. And he lived a fairly hard life. That all the money he collected he would turn in. And I don't know why, but he would suffer sometimes from not having enough nutrition. Even though he was collecting enough money, he would turn it all in as Prabhupada requested, although Srila Prabhupada certainly wanted him to eat properly, but sometimes he has a tendency to overdo things. And so he did like that a little bit. Eventually he ended up in Hyderabad, where he helped Guru Govinda Maharaj develop the Bhubaneswar temple, but due to local politics, he was removed and never given any credit for all the hard work that he did. And even the same for the Krishna Balaram Mandir. People remember so-and-so, and they remember so-and-so, and they remember so-and-so. But nobody never remembers Tejas. Even though he collected as much money as anyone else there, and actually managed the money for Srila Prabhupada, and was often hated because he's a very frugal person who won't disperse money very easily. So from there he ended up in the Philippines with Kamal Krishna Maharaj, and again due to local politics, he was accused of undermining the Maharaj, even though he had built up the book trust there to an awful lot of books, was paying all the bills of the business that he made, never took a dime from the temple, but supported the temple. But everybody turned their back on him, pointing the finger that Tejas did it, Maharaj, Tejas did it. And somehow, dear Krishna Maharaj is a very headstrong person. He somehow ever bought into it, and Tejas, never properly defended himself.
Tamal Krishna.
Tamal Krishna, headstrong person like that, and bought into it, and Tejas never defended himself properly, and he ended up back in the States. And to make a longer story short, somehow he came here in 2010 and desired to have a base here. He was more welcome in Hungary, where we have built a self-sufficient farm that is recognized by the government, supported by taxpayer dollars, is completely self-sufficient. Any devotee that doesn't want to just live off of what they produce, they live in the city, little town around there, and some of them hold places on the town council. I think one was even the mayor. And they provide boga or food to the restaurant there. But they spent many hours interviewing Tejas and wrote a book, and with the blessings of Sri Ram Swami, who most of them are his disciples, and he established the place there, they established their agriculture based on what he taught them. And he's always very welcome there. They treat him very nicely. He's trying to write some books now, but his health is not good. He suffers. He's a little bit older than me, maybe 2 or 3 years, and in his 70s, and he just, he has cancer and he has many other health issues. But he plugs along, and believe it or not, he actually gardens for Krishna. He produces most of the roses that we offer to Krishna here. He likes to go out and garden for Krishna. So that's one way a person can live their life. It's a life of austerity. He was always thinking ahead. He always felt himself actually not worthy to serve Srila Prabhupada. So he would stay in the back, never really be in pictures and stuff like that. Always kind of person that stayed in the back. Never really felt himself worthy, but felt Prabhupada was very great Mahatma, a spiritual master, and that he could just try to do what he could to assist him. And Prabhupada would always call him and give him jobs and talk to him and give him instructions. He would never want to go see Srila Prabhupada on his own. So that's, one way we see a person living his life like that. He really didn't seem to get a lot out of life. He could have had a lot more. He's very happy. It's because he's so detailed. He's very expert at collecting what the government owes him. He collects his Social Security, he collects his Medicare and all that stuff. Whatever is possible to be offered, Tejas gets it. If AT&T tries to overcharge him, they end up paying for it because they're dealing with Tejas. Nobody gets away with a nickel from Tejas. So, the government, sends people out there. He even arranged that they pay some devotees to go down there and assist him for, I think like, they pay him $9 an hour to assist him, I think 20 hours a week. They got to go there and, help him in different ways. All those things paid for by, because he's a retired citizen. Anyway, that's one way. And of course, the opposite is that we are really interested in opulence. And I don't know about you, but I was born with that desire. I didn't have any desire for renunciation. My father was Protestant, my mother was Catholic, but my father's mother was a fanatical Christian Scientist and never went to doctors and didn't believe in going to a doctor, only in faith healing. And she suffered from a disease, so my father couldn't really handle it anymore. And when World War II broke out, he just ran off and joined the Navy and never came back. They were in Colorado. They were Swedish immigrants. The government gave them 150 acres of land to farm. If they couldn't farm it, the government took it back. But, all these people could farm. So they farmed the land. But he never wanted to go back. It was in Colorado. It was too cold. He didn't like the humidity and the heat here, but it was better than Colorado. I remember his father would write him letters and say, please come back to the farm. But he didn't want to go back to the farm. He married my mother when he was in the port of New Orleans. So, what's the point of saying that? I forget what the point is of saying that, I don't know what the point was of saying that,
Contrasting with Tejas?
Well, yeah, I was contrasting. Some people want opulence, so I was born like that. And so my father was Protestant, but he couldn't stand hypocrisy in the church, and he couldn't stand hypocrisy in government. But he wasn't like an outgoing political figure. He didn't really speak in public, only to his circle of friends, Like just a hard-working, honest guy, So, but my mother was Roman Catholic, and whole family Catholic. All my cousins went to Catholic school. They couldn't afford to send us to Catholic school. We went to East Jefferson Public School. It was the only boys' school, and at that time, boys and girls were actually separated. They had one school for the girls, one school for the boys. And the first year I went, they integrated the school. But she was very simple, faithful lady who believed in the church and always sent us to church and catechism. But I never had it. I remember when I was confirmed, the priest asked me, he said, so what would you like to be? Would you like to be a priest? I said, oh, no, Father, not me. I don't want to be a priest. What do you want to be? I want to be a baseball player. That's what I told him. I want to be a baseball player. I guess he was thinking, oh, man, what's this kid? He doesn't know what he's talking about. But I didn't. But anyway, his life was, so I didn't want to live a life of renunciation. I just wanted to enjoy the world. I wanted opulence. That's what it seemed to be about. I wanted happiness in life. My parents, I couldn't really say that they were perfectly happy, and all the other kids in the neighborhood thought like me. They didn't think their parents were perfectly happy either. We just wanted to be happy. So somehow, in the course of trying to find happiness, I found Krishna consciousness. And that's when the quest for just becoming opulent in this world sort of ceased, rather than being always plagued. You know, you got that like little nightmare in the back of your mind. Oh no, you should do this, you should do that. But somehow I had, this, I don't, Srila Prabhupada was such a dynamic, for lack of words, and we often use those words, preacher, better to say minister or teacher. He was such a dynamic teacher that he changed my whole psychic of, wanting to live a life devoted to God. And I knew a little bit what that was about. I never wanted to be devoted to God before. I'd always seen monks and people like that renounced and just spend their time praying. But that's not what I wanted to do. But Srila Prabhupada changed my mind that devotion to God was a 24/7 thing, that whatever you do in life, you can do it for Krishna, God. And so I sort of picked up on that idea. And I would, that of doing whatever you do for God. But it takes some training, and that's why it's good before getting married to get some training. Because otherwise when you're married, there's too many bills and whatnot to pay. And there's generally not enough time for training. But when you're single, you got all the time in the world, practically speaking. So we used to live in the New Orleans temple, the single guys, and that's all we knew were those four walls, except when we would go out to distribute some books or go out to do what we did. And because we could do whatever we did for Krishna, we had an incense business, and we would sell incense everywhere. We would just travel around and sell incense, and that's how we paid for everything. We wasn't very powerful preachers. Nobody cared to listen to us. We were just out of high school, practically speaking. No one went to college. We didn't even have a college education. So who was going to sit there and listen to it? We may have sounded good, and none of us were empowered enough to, where, people were just enamored by us or something, by our speech or by, our activities. Certainly not by my singing, But we had to serve Prabhupada, and so that's how we bought the New Orleans temple. That's how we bought this form originally. We would just sell incense everywhere. It had Krishna in the package. It had the Maha Mantra. And that's the first place I ever saw the Maha Mantra, was on a pack of incense. The first prasadam I ever got, I saw a devotee on the street in San Francisco. And he would just give out incense to people. And it was lit. And I was just like a hippie kid, from New Orleans in San Francisco. So I took the incense from him, And then got back to New Orleans, and one of my friends gives me this pack of incense, and it's got this Maha Mantra on the back. So I was chanting, trying to chant that mantra. It's a good thing it was in Roman letters. I don't know how I was pronouncing it. And some devotees came down to New Orleans. They came from Boston. There was a young man working on his master's degree at Tulane University in business administration. And he wrote the Boston Temple saying, I think this would be a good place for Hare Krishna Temple. He was from Boston. Later on, he opened many of the record stores that we sold incense to. The name of those stores at that time was the General Store or something like that. So, devotees were sent down from Boston in January of 1971. They rented a house, a duplex. There were just regular people living next to us, an African-American family. There were college kids living in the other house on the other side. And we had, one half of the apartment on Spruce Street off of South California Avenue. And that was in January of 71. I moved into the temple in September of 1971. And in 1972, I think July, we bought the New Orleans temple for $25,000. It was a wreck, though. I mean, it was a wreck. There were a bunch of hippie people living there, and they had a candle factory. And they had wax everywhere. That whole top apartment was filled with wax. Remember Dwi Buja? Dwi Buja had just gotten out of the military, in the army, and somebody had sold him a Krishna book. He read the Krishna book. He was more Krishna conscious than me. I was there. I think I was initiated when he came, but he was more Krishna conscious than me because he had all this faith in Krishna, in the Krishna book. I was still thinking Krishna was like a mythological figure, you know. I like Lord Chaitanya. He was here only 500 years ago. You know, I mean, he did things that seemed kind of common. You know, he was the greatest evangelist that you could find on the face of the earth. But, you know, I was used to hearing stuff like that. But Krishna just sounded like a mythological figure to me. In the Bhagavad Gita, I could appreciate the philosophy, you know, but Krishna's pastimes, you know, I wasn't enthralled by them, to say the least. You know. Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada, you know, that, you know, moved me. You know, practicing yoga and trying to control my senses, which you know, really were very attached to sense gratification, that I had made this whole change in life. Still, you know, somehow ever the senses, you know, they followed as long as I stayed engaged in devotional service. You know, my mind, my senses, that, you know, they actually assisted. Somehow ever, you know, Prabhupada just lifted me up to the spiritual platform instead of just wanting to be happy by satisfying my tongue, satisfying my senses in general, you know, just earning money and finding a nice soulmate. I was happy to just be serving Krishna. And I didn't know how I was happy doing that, but, you know, somehow it was working where I was actually feeling some happiness. I was also pretty disgusted with the miseries of the world. And I could see that everyone was just dying and growing old and suffering with disease. And, you know, so I was somehow ever Prabhupada's teachings that we were a spiritual being, and really we should take the opportunity to return to a permanent place. And not just to try to enjoy things temporary in this world. And even if I went to heaven and did the same type of thing, but maybe in the mode of goodness, but eventually would have to come back down to earth. You know, I was tired of that. Somehow ever I was tired of that. I didn't like seeing people suffer, and I didn't want to suffer anymore. Just wanted to be liberated, so to speak. But, you know, at the time I wasn't necessarily counting on 40, 50, 60 years of hard devotional service, you know. I was kind of hoping that I would make advancement real rapidly. But, you know, Prabhupada would often say things to be better to be slow like the turtle than fast like the rabbit and stop fast. So therefore, you know, there was the opportunity, just give your life to Krishna, and, you know, Krishna will take care of things. And that all worked out. So rather than, you know, pursuing the opposite of Tejas, to, you know, become really proficient at just doing something in the material world, not for Krishna, but for my sense gratification, you know, my family, you know, myself. I was listening to one lady being interviewed yesterday, and she said she admitted that I am so attached to just me. I can't focus on nothing but me. And so when we decided to have a family, and it was a gay couple, she was a lesbian, you know, they adopted a child. When her and her mate decided to adopt a child, she said, I didn't want to have anything to do with it because I didn't want to think about anybody but me. I thought that's too troublesome. Last I wanted some kid. But the other person wanted a kid. And they actually had twins. And she said it changed my life because then I found that there was happiness in not being so selfish. But then she got to talking on the radio, and she said, you know, actually, even this I do for my own selfish self. You know, that's what she said. Even, I got to admit, I still haven't gotten out of it. Even, you know, raising these kids, I'm doing it for my own selfish self, you know. She admitted like that. So, I mean, that's one type of life, we're just trying our best to get things in this world, name and fame and pleasure. And then the other thing is just try to serve Krishna no matter what happens. And sometimes there's good days and sometimes there's bad days, but let me stick with my service. Don't let me ever give up the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of God. And that's the unique thing that Prabhupada brought. Now, I could never focus my mind on God very well because I couldn't really see Him. I didn't know much about Him. And it just wasn't revealed in my previous culture. And in the Vedic culture, I didn't, I was thinking of it in terms of like I was educated. That it sounded like mythology to me. But gradually, I started to have some faith in Krishna, the Supreme Person. I started to have some faith that there actually was a civilization 5,000 years ago. And that the world revolves in these large time cycles. And that all these different incarnations have appeared. And what really gave me faith is that by remembering them, I started to find spiritual strength in that. And there are so many spiritual benedictions given by remembering the pastimes of the Lord. And even some things that help us materially. Like there's one pastime I remember every morning. Because the benediction of that pastime is that one becomes fearless. And because I still have this habit from the old days of the brahmachari ashram, where we would take a cold shower in the morning. That's when I started remembering this pastime, because I didn't want to get into cold water. But I remember this pastime, and I try to get the benediction to become fearless, and then I jump into cold water. So I still remember that every morning. And it helps me out. Recently, we had one of our members who was going through some difficulty. And so I directed them to that pastime. And they actually posted it on their Facebook page, and they posted that picture that goes along with the pastime. There's a really nice painting. It wasn't done by Madhava Priya. She's done the other ones. This is a fighting picture between two dwarves, two weapons, one belonging to Krishna or Vishnu, the other belonging to Lord Shiva. And so they're fighting. Each of them were released. Krishna released the Narayan, well, Lord Shiva released the Shiva Dwara first to attack Krishna, to defeat him, to help his devotee. And Lord Krishna counteracted it with the Narayan Dwara. One who remembers that pastime in the early morning hours, Krishna gives the benediction, you'll become fearless. So, and you can find so many benedictions like that throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam and pastimes of Lord Chaitanya described in the Chaitanya Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. So that helped me to really meditate upon God, the Ishwara, the Supreme Controller, the Supreme Personality of God. And somehow ever, even though I thought Krishna was mythology, because of, I don't know if it was because of my Catholic upbringing or what, I could still have faith in Krishna being on the altar. I mean, God's everywhere. God can incarnate very easily in His murti. It's not difficult. The priest calls Him with sacred mantras. I used to see the priest always calling with mantras, for God to enter into the sacrament. And all the people at church, if you were free from sin, you could go and get that sacrament. And to get free from sin, you had to confess up to some Brahmin and listen to follow the atonement that they gave. So I didn't mind the puja at all, and I always liked doing that to some extent, I would like serving Krishna in that way. So that was all right. But when I started to really have faith in Krishna as the Supreme Person who incarnated 5,000 years ago, and who had many, many other incarnations appeared in other times and places, it became so much easier to fix my mind on Krishna. Then the meditation, really started to pay off, so to speak. Krishna would help with, with this spiritual life, and to not have so many doubts about going back home to Godhead, not even having doubts about giving up, just trying to pursue material things, and just try to help Prabhupada's movement, whatever my little position will be, And then to deal with all the difficulties that come throughout life, all of us. I mean, nobody gets out of difficulty. Everyone's going to run into whatever it is. Things happen to you, things happen to your parents, things happen to your spouse, things happen to your children. Things happen all the time in this world, and there's no escaping it. And every one of us has to face that test, no matter what it be. I mean, Krishna Shraya has to face that test every morning, living in an old bus. And he's getting old. So, everybody's got their test. Every person. So, the Krishna consciousness is meant to help us. Help us to tolerate the difficulties of life. That's what Krishna suggests. Just tolerate it. It's like a little bump in the road. You're going somewhere, there's some bumps in the road, all right. Tolerate it and get to where you're going. So we're going back home to Godhead. All these bumps won't be there one day. And we'll change our body like Narada Muni. He had a hard life. His mama was just a maidservant. Didn't know who his father was. And then she was bitten by a snake and died. He's only, a kid like in elementary school, but didn't have any education. He just happened to meet some devotees. And somehow or other they gave him some faith in Krishna and told him to just sing the glory of the Lord. And so then he just traveled around from that point for the rest of his life. And he died an old man. But he became very experienced just seeing the world from a detached point of view and chanting the holy name of the Lord. And when he gave up his body, the Bhagavatam says it was like lightning. One moment, he's just an old, shriveled up old man remembering Krishna. And the next moment, he's Narada Muni. Can travel throughout the material and spiritual worlds, taking part in the Lord's pastimes. There's some sort of assistant. Sometimes not always the nicest job. It was Narada Muni that went and told Kamsa, the arch enemy of Krishna, that Krishna was in Vrindavan. Otherwise, Kamsa didn't know before then. Why did he do that? Because Narada Muni wanted to speed up the pastime of the Lord. The Lord appeared to free the world from so many demoniac figures. He wasn't worried about Krishna. Kamsa would send his demoniac assistants to kill Krishna, but they would be killed. So, one moment, a shriveled up old man, next moment, Narada Muni. So that's Krishna consciousness. We tolerate things in this world. We do our best to do our duty. Everybody should know that that's the teaching of Bhagavad Gita. You've got to do your duty, but do it for Krishna and you'll be transcendental. Do that duty for Krishna, remember Krishna, and we'll be transcendental. And at the end of life, we go back home to Godhead. So, we better stop now. It's like 10 minutes overdue here. My wife's going to start complaining because they like to serve on time. So, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.